we have to understand, we learn best from those people we love, respect, and admire, which tends to be family, friends, culture, significant others in our culture. And so those behaviors, trauma, it can be hard to change them. They can be changed, but we have to be very intentional. Right? So, yes.
I am struggling with, behaviors, core values instilled in me from a very young child. What do you do when you find out that some of the things that were instilled in you under the best intentions can turn around and bite you in the butt? My dad was a minister, old school Pentecostal, no sandals, no pants, no makeup, no jewelry, old time. If it wasn't in the word, it wasn't done. And the word was also used to, as an adult, I see it was battered to the family. Father's word was almighty no matter what, because he was the head of the house. Right or wrong, he was the head of the house. And being raised that way, I have leaned toward the man being the head of the house, and have found out that I have been more successful when I have been alone than when I've had a head of the house. And I'm struggling with this.
Well, you have to do what we talked about last week, and we're gonna talk about it more tonight. We'll get more in depth. Is that belief productive or unproductive? Is it right or wrong? In other words, is it moral or is it immoral? And then you have to make a decision. Remember the magic question? What was the magic question last week?
Is it continuing to serve my purpose or something like that?
In essence, will the results of my behavior meet my needs over time?
That's it.
And so if your beliefs are producing behavior that doesn't meet your needs, that's the answer, then you need to change your belief.
And if those beliefs came straight from the Bible, that's where I'm struggling.
Well, they may, I won't question whether or not they came from the Bible, but how they're applied is the issue. Right? So if the word isn't wrong, how we apply the word. So that's what you need to look at. Good question.
Can I just interject? Remember that when Jesus was in the wilderness, the devil used the word against him and tried to get him to do things, so that the word can be manipulated and used in a very selfish way to get someone's selfish motives accomplished. So, yeah, the word has truth to it, but how it's applied and how it's used can be very bad or very
Yeah,
good.
he who the Father loveth, therefore that's who he chasteneth, and 30 licks with a belt drove the message home.
And that's wrong. Right?
That's,
So that's what I'm saying. You're gonna have to make a decision that regardless of where the beliefs came from, is it wrong or is it right? Was it applied correctly? And that can be hard when it comes from family. That's why we're saying, or when it comes from trauma, it can be difficult. All right, did we handle those now? Starting this week. All right, so this week, we're gonna talk about program thinking, beliefs, and behaviors. So we're gonna continue to talk about beliefs, but we're also gonna talk about this program, some people call it conditioning, environmental conditioning. We're gonna talk about program thinking and how that impacts our beliefs and how that impacts our behaviors. Everybody in here is working a program. We all have a belief system and we're all trying to get our needs met. And so we're all working this program. And part of it is understanding that you are, right? And then understanding why am I doing that? And where did it come from? And what was the context? So we're gonna talk about that tonight. All right, so the concept, we program ourselves based on our needs and beliefs, much like someone would program something to be recorded. So nowadays, when we started teaching this, we had our VCRs, now there's DVRs. It's all digital and everything. So if you wanted to record a program tonight, while you were here at church, you know, as long as your electrical is working and that machine is working, you could pre-program that thing to record something at 7 o'clock, for example. And it would record it, right? Now, our brains obviously are more complicated than that. And I'm gonna sound like I'm contradicting myself, but in a lot of ways, that's exactly how our brains are programmed, based on those beliefs, those friends, the culture we grew up in, because we take all of that in, and a lot of it we accept, because we want to be connected to family, we want to be connected to friends, we want to be connected to our culture. And so what's happening is, you're not using a remote control, but you're programming yourself for life, right? It can be as simple as, your dad loved the Packers, and so you love the Packers, or the Bucks, or the Brewers, or the Badgers, or whatever, right? We don't talk about teams outside of Wisconsin. It could be something as simple as that, but because your dad or mom or uncle or brother, whatever, loved a sports team, you might love that team. Food, right? Because we get introduced to food and the family, and food is a big indicator of love, we can program ourselves. I never had anything but what people would say soul food until I came to Milwaukee. I didn't really know other food existed. We ate soul food in our house. We were brought up, that's what we ate. And then I came to Milwaukee, and there's all these Mexican restaurants and Italian restaurants. I'm like, whoa, little boy from the country, right? And so then my taste buds began to want other things, but I'm basically programmed to eat soul food. And so when holidays come around and the food is brought out and family comes around, it's like a hand in glove, right? It's not just for me, for all of us. So that's what we're talking about. So then what happens is once we have adopted those beliefs, and we'll explain this more in the lesson, but what we don't really want to do is have to go back and think about every action I'm about to take. I want to pre-program myself, like the DVR, so I can just act. Right? So yesterday I broke up my first fight at work in years. I used to wrestle with the kids all the time when I worked at Ethan Allen, but I was 25 to 34. I was in decent shape. And so I started getting promoted, and now I'm working with girls, and I happened to be on the unit. No, I heard them yelling, and I went down there, and I grabbed one girl, and the staff grabbed the other girl. But my point is, they had pre-programmed themselves. If you disrespect me verbally, and they were throwing punches like that, you know, they were throwing punches at each other, whoa, right? They pre-programmed themselves. They hadn't even touched each other yet. It was all words. But they had told themselves, if someone calls me this name, based on my belief that that's disrespect, so that's called autopilot. I've often heard people say, you've probably heard this, I wish someone would just take control of my life. These individuals are not terribly unlike us. Most law-abiding citizens have programmed themselves to avoid serious criminal behavior. I don't think anybody in the room is gonna go rob a bank tonight, you know, or you're gonna go and, you know, steal a car. I really don't think most law-abiding citizens have programmed themselves, I don't do that, right? That's not right. That's part of your program. Where other people have said, you know, this is how I'm gonna live. And if I can catch you and grab your purse or get your wallet or steal your car or whatever, that's what I'm gonna do. So that becomes part of the difference. Programming allows individuals to make decisions once, sometimes never revisiting the moral or rational implications of those decisions. The beauty and danger of such thinking allows individuals to simply act on their beliefs without running their thoughts through any type of a moral filter. In essence, these individuals are on autopilot. Any question about that so far? All right.
Okay, so there's these little bars that are over there that Dorothy is sharing with the class. Anybody who does not have a peanut allergy can go and grab one of those. Feel free to get that. There was something else I was gonna say.
What a wonderful guy.
Yeah. Oh, happy Valentine's Day. Some hearts on the door. Okay, so back to our, you didn't, cookies? Did you not want to hear those?
I'll do it next time.
Back to our sheet there, because most of us have experienced problems in getting our needs met, we have a tendency to program our thinking. We construct a method or mode of conduct that prioritizes our personal needs being met over and above anyone or anything. Program thinking allows us to function on autopilot because we've previously moralized, justified, and rationalized our thinking forever. So when you think about autopilot, most of us, the first thing that comes to mind is an airplane. You know, the pilots flying the airplane, and when everything is smooth and no threat or whatever, boom, they switch it to autopilot. That means the plane is literally flying itself, right? So the same way that the plane is flying itself is the same way that our beliefs, our program is running by itself. So we don't have to think about, like, I'll take the example of Mike and I when we were first married and he first started running the streets and stuff. My autopilot kicked in, which I gave myself permission, which we're going to talk about in a little while, to just get angry and explode and throw things at him because, remember, family was the first. Family was the absolute first thing in line that develops, or what's the word, not develops. No, that's not a word either. It's the first factor that creates our belief system. So my parents did a lot of screaming and yelling at each other when one or the other didn't meet the expectations of the other. So that was my autopilot. It kicked in. I didn't think about it. I didn't ask myself, is this right? Is this something that's productive? I just did it. It just kicked in. So our autopilot is usually triggered by some event in our lives. It triggers it and it brings it out whether we think about it or not. It's just autopilot. And for me anyway, my deep problem was control, the feeling of being out of control. Mike is doing stuff that I didn't think was right. I was out of control, and so again, my autopilot kicked in, the anger kicked in, the attempt to try to control the situation, which very seldom worked. It usually did the opposite. So back to the sheet there, by moralizing, justifying, and rationalizing our beliefs, we do not need to perform those tasks for each individual belief and consequent behavior. So this thinking permits us to just act without hesitation or remorse because we've previously experienced a lack in our needs, and programming helps us, here's something you should underline, avoid the pain of not having our needs met. So the bottom line, with everything that would happen to Mike and I during that time was my fear of my needs not being met. My need was to feel secure in my relationship, for my husband to be at home with us, him getting duty up and leaving and going out with single friends threatened that. Unfortunately, because my autopilot, my coping strategy and my autopilot was so negative at first, it literally pushed him away. So the very thing that I wanted, the need that I had, wasn't being met. There's the magic question again. Is the results of my behavior going to meet my need over time? And it wasn't. It didn't. But because it was because I was on autopilot, it took me having to stop and question myself and question my actions and question my behavior and asking myself some really serious, honest questions. Jackie, is your behavior doing something positive, or is it doing something negative? And the bottom line was, it was very negative. It was pushing my husband away from me, not drawing him closer to me. So I had to make a choice, and it sounds like, oh, you just made a choice. It is a choice initially, and then it is a lot of work after that to put that choice into action. So the last sentence there says, programming our thinking also permits us to engage in self-deception by denying, distorting, and substituting others and things for our needs. So eventually, Mike didn't stop immediately, but eventually I got to the point where when Mike was getting all dialed up to go out, I go in the bathroom, I go in the bedroom, I pray, I say, Lord, I don't want to react this way, I don't want to be on autopilot, don't want to get screaming crazy and throw things at him. And God gave me the strength to do that. And the most remarkable things started to happen. Instead of him going out with his friends, he started staying home a little bit more. He started like questioning, who are you and what did you do with my wife? Because I wasn't screaming anymore. I wasn't throwing things at him. I wasn't getting angry.
Did it just click one day, or did it take time?
It took time.
I mean, you were still mad at him, and you were still yelling, and the yelling just slowed down over time, or did it just stop one day?
No, the yelling stopped.
Yeah. It did. Oh.
No, the yelling stopped. I made the decision. The anger did not. I was still angry and upset. I did not want my husband leaving the house and going out with single guys and doing whatever. But I knew that the screaming and the yelling was not going to produce anything positive.
So Jackie really began to examine her results. The magic question we asked last week. And here's where we all struggle. I struggle with this too. We need to focus on that question and ask ourselves, are we getting the results that we want? Right? Now, if you're honest about that, most of the time you'll see when it's inappropriate, okay, and ineffective, you'll see that you're not getting the results that you want. Then the next question should be, how do I get better results? Right? So to get better results, you need more options. So just think about this. When you drive up to McDonald's, Burger King, Taco Bell, some of them have 4 or 5 panels of food. That's options. To me, that's power. I'm in the drive-thru like, woo! Baby! I got, okay, hold on, don't ask me what I want, I'm looking, right? That's options. But what most of us do when we have a belief system that's rigid, we have one option. And we keep trying to use it,
Which is the autopilot. it kicks in.
Right. So there's an old saying that if you go through life and your worldview is that you're a hammer, then everything you see is a nail. Bang! It's gotta be pounded. I gotta be in control. I got one tool. And so every time you reach for your tool, it's the same hammer, but you keep expecting different results. I don't know why, Eric isn't responding differently. I only cussed him out 5 times this week. What's the big deal? Right? Wham! And so what we need is to think about it almost like fast food. You need options, not one autopilot. We need options.
And I also wanted to address the deception, because, and we're gonna get into that a little bit later, but I lived for a long time in a state of deception, thinking that my actions and my behavior was justified. So I hear this a lot from women, if their husbands are cheaters or not acting right or spending money frivolously, or they feel like they're being used or abused in some way. We don't have the right, especially as Christians, to act inappropriately towards our spouses, even if they're doing the same thing. And you're up.
All right, any questions about that? So we're gonna start, we're gonna start walking through, there's 6 core components of this program thinking. Now this is one of those lessons, I'm just gonna say this, and this isn't bragging about me and Jackie. If you take this stuff in this lesson and you're honest about it, especially these core components we're about to go through, it can help you to change your life. I feel that confident about it. All right, so the first core component are those beliefs again. So it's right there on your handout. I'm gonna write it on the board, but it's on your handout. Beliefs. Remember, beliefs are things we believe to be true. They don't have to necessarily be true. I can tell you it's 94 degrees and sunny right now outside. And I can really believe it, right? The people who flew airplanes into the World Trade Center really believe that they're going to paradise, and each one of them are gonna get 67 virgins. I don't know what the women in the religion do, or what they get, but that's what these guys believe. Well, they really believed it, and they were willing to give up their lives, but it was wrong. So beliefs are just beliefs, all right? So that's the first component of this program thinking. We go back and we look at beliefs, okay? And remember, we learn best from those, our beliefs generally come from those people we love, respect, and admire, all right? So what you need to do is ask yourself, what do I believe about everything? Do I believe there's a God? Do I believe it's okay to waste money? What do you believe? Where did you get those beliefs? When did you make them a part of your life? What are they supposed to do? That's what you need to do with everything, right? Number 2, based on so this is gonna work down and up. Based on what we believe in, we develop value placements, or you could say things that are important to us. Right now, there's probably a number of ways to look at value placements, but there's 3 easy ways to look at what's important and what's valuable to you. You ask yourself, where do I spend my time? Who do I spend my time with? What do I spend my time doing will tell me what's valuable to you. So we always do the same thing. If I say I love Jackie, but I spend all my time with my buddy Bill fishing, hunting, so it doesn't even have to be anything illegal. Playing golf, boating, snowmobiling, I spend all my time, but I tell her that I love her. by virtue of who you spend your time with, tells me what's important to you and who you love. Number two, money. Same thing. If I say, oh, I love you, I love you, I love you, but I spend all my money on me, clothes, fishing poles, boats, you know, all of this thing. And again, I'm not even talking about drugs and alcohol. Obviously, that's wrong. But if I spend my money on all of these other fun things and other people, and I don't spend my money on her and trying to keep a good house and, you know, investing and saving, I don't love her. I love who I'm spending my money on, whether that's me or other people. And three, your talents and resources. And so, where do you spend your time? Who do you spend your time with? What do you spend your time doing? Now, if you're a single, I always, you know, if you're a single woman in here, but this goes for single men. Quit trying to be so romantic when you're dating and become more practical. We do marriage counseling with people, they didn't talk about whether they wanted to have kids, how they were gonna spend money, are we gonna have one account or two accounts, are we gonna go to, there's all these assumptions being made, and there's no real conversation going on, right? So if you're single, if you're married, you're stuck. We can try to help you get some marriage counseling. But if you're single, you need to be thinking about this, because if I'm a single dude and I'm trying to date her and I spend all my time with my buddies, there should be something going off in her head. No matter how much I tell her I love her. Same thing with the money. Oh, I want to marry you and I want to be with you and I love you, and you know, but I spend all my money on myself and other people and my talents and resources, right? So that tells me what's important to you. When I start counseling with people, you know, 9 times out of 10, depending on what counseling it is, before I let people tell me about all of their situation, because most of it is case building, I want to tell you how bad Jackie is. You guys just don't really know her, man. She's blah, 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 and they go on and on and on and on. Because what the person is trying to do is get the counselor on their side. I want you to agree with me against this other person. That's not counseling, right? So what I ask people is those 3 questions. Tell me where you spend your time. Now, I don't ask them what's important to you, because that would tip them off. Right? You know, what do you spend your, what do you like to do? What do you, and they get to talk, blah, 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 and they fall right into, where do you spend your money? What kind of investments you got? Blah, 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 I ain't got no money, we're broke, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, what are your talents and resources? Well, you know, blah, blah, blah. And then I ask them, well, what's important to you? Oh, my wife or my husband. No, they're not. You just told me. And then I repeat back to them what they just told me, because that's what's important. Right? That's what's important. So you understand, once you have beliefs, those beliefs become important to you, and that's what you're going to put the value in, right? And then number 3. Well, before I even go to number 3, let me talk about that a little more, because Jackie has alluded to it again tonight. The first 3 years of our marriage, I did everything I could to make us homeless and, you know, divorced. I would gamble the rent money away, shooting dice or playing pool or cards. I would be buying drugs. I would be buying clothes and stuff that I didn't need and couldn't afford, but I would buy them to try to impress people. So that's what was valuable to me, because I believed it was okay to do that based on how I was brought up. So when you sit down and really think about this, how many beliefs that I get from my family, my friends, and my culture that are just flat out not working? But I keep trying to make them work because they came from people you love, respect, and admire. But that question is still the same. Are the results of your behavior meeting your needs now, and will they meet your needs over time? Right? So when you identify what's valuable to you and what your beliefs are and what's valuable, you're going to do something automatically. All of us have done this. You're going to give yourself permission. And this can be very good, or this can be very bad. Right? So we don't really need to talk about the good permission. I'll give you one example of the good permission. couple Sundays, 2 or 3 Sundays ago, Pastor asked us for a special offering. I forget what the reason was. I had already given myself permission to give, because I want to bless the work of God, I wanna bless the kingdom. So that's the good permission, getting up and going to work on time, that's the good, you're not here for that. You're here for that permission where you've given yourself permission to do things that are not productive. Permission is the personal, moral authority to act on our beliefs, based on the perception that certain needs haven't been met. Permission is achieved through justification, acting on our beliefs because we believe them to be justified, and rationalization, the explanation of why our actions are just and rational, right? And so if you spend most of your day rationalizing and explaining and justifying your actions, there's something wrong. But when we give ourselves permission to do things, and so I worked in the Department of Corrections for, I don't know, almost 30 years altogether. And I remember running across this guy who was doing like 57 years or something for murder, and somehow he got in one of my groups, or we were just talking, but he was telling me what happened here in Milwaukee years ago. He was with his guys, he's out at a nightclub, he's dressed real nice, and him and his guys are leaving the club. So they're walking toward the door, and another 2 or 3 guys come in, and he had a drink in his hand, and this guy, maybe it was in this hand, the guy bumped him and he spilled the drink on his, $1,000 suit that he's trying to impress everybody for. This guy immediately, oh, I'm sorry, bang, dead. Because he gave himself permission to do that, because it was important for him to wear a $1,000 suit to impress his buddies and everybody in the club, and his belief was this is how you live life. Until you get in front of the judge and the jury says guilty of first-degree murder, and you get 57 years. And now you're like, maybe 30, and you still got like 40-something years to go, because this happened 7 or 8 years ago. Of course it's not worth it then. Of course they come to group and, oh, Mr. Mike, can you help? Yeah, I can't get you out of here, you got 40-something years to go. This is the stuff you should have been thinking about before that. So the good permission, don't start asking me, the good permission is great. We're here to talk about that permission that isn't so good, right? So my uncle told me, I told you this a couple weeks ago, when I was, 6 or 7, don't ever let anybody spit on you. Remember that gross little story? If I don't change that belief, and somebody spits on me and I beat them up seriously, or I kill them, is that belief gonna meet my need over time? Hello? No. Guys are scaring the dickens out of me. Thinking about, I don't know, I kill somebody tonight. But that belief came from a family member who I wanted to be accepted by, who I wanted to be approved of, who I wanted to be nurtured by. At that time, I wanted to be in a relationship with him. And so I took it in as one of my beliefs. And it was important to me because it came from a family member, right? This is someone I spent time with, spent money with, on all of that stuff. And so once we give ourselves permission, you're going to act. When I give myself permission to go to McDonald's, I don't pull into the driveway and go, oh boy, should I do this? Oh, Jackie's not gonna be happy, but she's not.
You should be thinking that.
Once we give ourselves permission to do something, I said to her last Saturday, God bless her soul, babe, I'd like to have some wings for the Super Bowl. So we got some wings, she cooked them up for me. When she brought them babies out, I didn't sit there, oh, should I do this? No, we don't do that, because we've already given ourselves permission, we've rationalized it and justified it, and we act. Unfortunately, at least one person got killed in Kansas City today at a celebration because somebody with a gun gave themselves permission, it's okay to be shooting at somebody else. That's their belief. I have worked with guys in prison, I was telling her, I don't tell her everything, but I've worked with guys in prison, told me, Mr. Wood, yeah, I'm here because I shot this guy because he shot one of my guys, and matter of fact, we killed his brother because we knew that would bring him out to the funeral, so we could shoot at him at the funeral. That's a subcultural belief system, but we're the same when we were drinking and smoking and pornography and gambling and fighting and anger, all of this. We give ourselves permission to do these things, and the behavior follows the permission. Any questions about that? You're up. I'm fired up now.
So we're going through this pretty slow, but this whole process takes split-second timing to accomplish, from the belief to the end that we're gonna go through it in a minute. It happens in split-second timing.
I'm sorry. Hold that thought.
Hold
That's
that
it. I forgot, because she's teaching the other part where I usually tell this.
Mhm.
So let me explain permission a little bit. So, in the first 3 years of our marriage, when I was out there drinking and smoking and chasing women and all of that stuff, I gave myself permission to do that, based on my grandfather, my uncles, and in the neighborhood. But, you know, here's what I would do. We were living on the south side on 25th between Lapham and Orchard. I would go party on the north side, right? Because she couldn't find me, I thought, you know, and all of this stuff. I would be coming home, usually somewhere between 2:30 in the morning and 5, depending on how much partying I had done. And the same crazy thing would happen to me every time. And then you can pick this up with automatic thoughts. I'd be coming home, and for some reason, usually I'm coming down 27th Street, and I would get to the viaduct, so 27th and Clybourne, and all of a sudden, it's like I would remember, oh yeah, I'm married with a child. And so I would begin to rehearse in my mind what was gonna happen when I got home. I would start telling myself, she's gonna ask me where you been and who you been with and why you doing this. And I would literally sit in the car as if I was reading a movie script, and I would play it out in my head. The minute she asked me anything, I'm gonna flip the coffee table, I'm gonna bust the plant table. I never hit her, but I broke tables and I threw plants and I would raise my voice. And I'm not proud of this, I'm telling you this to try to help you. Most of the time, you know, 9 times out of 10, 10 times out of 10, it would work. She would either go back to bed or she would go to bed crying because she couldn't control me. I would go in the living room and smoke another joint or have some more drinks. And I would tell her, I'm going out again tomorrow night. I would give myself permission based on my beliefs. Yeah, here's where it gets touchy. Now, I'm in your backyard now, because this is what we're doing. This is why you're here. Now, some of you are saying, oh, I've been so traumatized, I've been so abused. Yep, some of that has happened. But you have still given yourself permission to do what you want to do, because that's what you believe in, that's what's valuable to you. Every single night I get to 27th and Clybourne, and if the light was green, as I started to drive across that viaduct, I'm, oh yeah, she's gonna be asking me where you been and why you doing this and blah. I came home one night and she didn't do that. And I got in bed, I thought, oh, okay. And I laid down thinking she was asleep, and she rolled over and she said to me, you know, God loves you. Why are you running from God? Yeah. You would think she threatened to kill me. I jumped up. Don't talk to me about God, you know, and I'm cussing, and I put my clothes on and I got in my car and I showed her how tough I was. I went and slept in my car at Mitchell Park. You know, simply because she said, why are you running from God? So I gave myself permission to do all of those things, to drink, to smoke weed, to use opium, to chase women, to gamble. Nobody forced me to do any of those things. I gave myself permission to do those things.
Thank you.
Thank you for letting me interrupt you.
Oh, split second. So again, we're going through these processes slowly, but remember, these are the 6 core components to how our program thinking is formed. This is how it's formed, and I'll give you an illustration in just a minute. So the 4th one is control. So we have a belief about a particular subject. In my case, my belief was, I have a husband, he should be at home with me and my child. That's how my family functioned when I was young. You know, my dad would go to work, he'd come home, he'd stay home. He'd be with us. Because of that belief, my value placement was on staying home. I didn't, run out, I didn't get involved in a bunch of stuff. I stayed at home, I tried to, raise the kid. My daughter, the permission that I gave myself was when he did things that I didn't believe was right, I would give myself permission to get angry, to show him how much I disapproved of what he was doing. Ultimately, it was because I was trying to control the situation. So we have a belief, we put value placement on it, we give ourselves permission to act in a certain way when something comes against that belief, and our effort is basically to try to control it, because we want our belief to go forth rather than someone else's. So control is the need to control people, places, and environments, and listen to this, based on fear, insecurity, and a poor self-image. So there are people who are like natural leaders. They have leadership quality.
Oh, I thought you
And you can count on them. They make, good, quick decisions. They're good in emergency situations.
Let's stop at Culver's on the way home.
I'm not gonna give you permission to do that. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about are people who literally, because of fear and insecurity, always feel like they have to be in control of everything. And they dominate relationships, they dominate groups, they always have to have comments going, and they freak out if they feel out of control. It literally can incapacitate them to go places because they feel like they have to be in control of everything. That's the kind of control I'm talking about. And many times we get in that if we feel like we're out of control, and if we feel like something or someone is threatening our belief system. I thought you had something to say. And then the 5th one, Mike does a better job of this one.
You'll be fine.
This is positive reinforcement. I'm just gonna put that there. Positive reinforcement is this psychological, physical, or an emotional gratification and reward from having our needs met or controlling our environment. So the example Mike was just giving you is a perfect example. He'd come home, and of course, he's married, so I would be, the first thing he would do, he'd walk in the door, and I'd say, where have you been? It's 2 in the morning. What have you been doing? Who have you been with? And he'd start, raise his voice, start screaming and yelling, throwing things, punching things. I don't know how many tables he broke. Used to have little plant stands, and he'd smash them. And at first it worked. I would say fine, whatever, go to sleep. leave the room. But after a while, after God began to really work on me with this, challenging myself for not getting angry and reacting in a different way, that changed things. You know, he'd come home and I wasn't there by the door. I wasn't, you know, in his face and what are you doing and where have you been? That literally changed the whole environment of our household. He didn't have any way to like combat that, you know, like who are you and why aren't you acting the way that you used to act? And he didn't have any justification for leaving, and it began to actually change him. That's why the screaming and yelling did not meet my needs over time, but the change in my behavior, both before he left and after he came home, is what started to change our relationship.
So the positive reinforcement though is I got what I wanted.
Right, that's what I was.
So I would come home, I would have the script in my head. You're not gonna stop me from going out. I don't care what you say. I'm gonna yell and swear and break plant tables and throw plants. And she would go back to bed. Like I said, sometimes in tears. And I would sit down and have another drink or smoke some more weed. That was positive reinforcement from a negative behavior. And she couldn't stop me, and so I was positively reinforced that I can go out and do this again. So she's right, later on, as she renewed her Christian vows, her relationship, she became stronger and stopped feeding into that. But what we want you to understand here is the positive reinforcement can come from negative behaviors. My buddies were, you know, you're running your house and your wife can't control you and you're doing what you want to do and you go out and drink and smoke and chase women. It was positive reinforcement from negative behaviors. So that's what you have to ask yourself.
Correct. Yeah, so positive reinforcement can come from something positive, like someone gives you a compliment on something you've done or said, but it can come from a negative aspect too. Like in that case where his behavior was negative, but because of the way it affected me, he ended up being positively reinforced to do something negative again. And it doesn't make sense, but it does make sense because we do it all the time too.
Yes.
And then the last one is the auto thoughts. So when we get to this point, when we've gone from 1 to 6, and again, this happens like in split-second timing. Once we get here, we don't have to go back here and check all these boxes anymore. We just do it. Most of what we do in our auto thoughts or in the autopilot, most of what we do is positive. You know, I get up in the morning, every morning I brush my teeth. I don't have to ask myself every morning, should I brush my teeth today? Nope, I just do it. It's auto. I'm on autopilot. I don't ask myself if I should get dressed. I just get dressed. I'm not gonna go to work, you know, with no clothes on. That would be very inappropriate. So most of what we do in our auto thoughts or in autopilot is good. But it's the negative behavior that we have to start challenging. Like I had to start challenging my negative behavior of getting so angry, and, you know, out of control and throwing things and making life miserable literally for both of us, I had to start challenging that. Now, okay, so strawberry sundaes with pecans. Then the positive reinforcement is, at first, I feel really good. I feel very satisfied. Now, the next time I do this, I'm in autopilot. I'm not even gonna think about it twice. If the thought comes into my head, because I've gone through all of this already, immediately I'm gonna say, okay, give myself permission, boom, 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 boom. And we do this in split-second timing, but it's all based on this first one. Whatever you believe, everything, the whole thing is gonna happen boom, 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 so fast that we don't even think about it, we just do it.
So when you get to number 6, so number 3 is really important, number 1 is important, 3 is important, and 6 of all of those are very important. Because it starts with the beliefs, we give ourselves permission, the automatic thoughts, here's what it says, planned. So these are not accidents, oh, I accidentally stopped at the tavern and got drunk. No, you didn't, you planned it. I accidentally, the car just drove, and the next thing I knew I was at Potawatomi, and I figured, well, I might as well go in. No, you planned that. It's planned, personally approved permission. Habitual behavior that becomes a part of us through positive reinforcement. So the things this is why positive reinforcement is so important. Where you get it from is where you're gonna wanna always get it from. How many kids run to their moms when they get hurt when they're little? Why? Why do kids go to mom in general? You guys might as well talk to me. I mean, I got an award from the White House from this stuff. President Bush, why do kids run to their moms when they're hurt, when they're little?
Supposed to be more nurturing.
Okay.
Good programs.
Do you need to tell them to do that again? No, because it was positively reinforcing to them. Mom kissed them, hugged them all, you know, whatever, your brother or sister was terrible, oh, I'm sorry you fell, whatever it is. We gotta get to the root, guys. That's why you're here. This is what we're doing every day. Men, well, my dad did this, my culture, I'm Latin, I'm black, I'm white, I'm this, I'm that. This is how men behave. We cheat, we drink, we gamble, we do this and that, and so then that becomes important to us because we got it from family, friends, or culture, or trauma. So when I work with ladies in human trafficking, it becomes important to them, believe it or not, to continue in human trafficking because they were traumatized there. And so they think that's where I'm supposed to be. So it can be very hard. They've given themselves permission to keep doing that thing. Right? And so, because they feel like to some degree they're in control and there's some positive reinforcement from this person that I'm involved with. And other people who are doing, that's why most of us don't like to drink alone. Right? We have at least one drinking buddy or a whole, you know, that TV show Cheers that was on back in the 80s? You know what the opening song was every time? Not as much fun drinking alone, or getting high alone, or gambling alone, or all of this stuff. Most of it we want to do with other people because there's a positive reinforcement that, yeah, I'm doing the right thing, I got the right belief. This feels good, and so that's automatically what I'm gonna do. So I was no longer thinking about whether I should go out tonight. I'm going out tonight because I had such a good time last night, and the night before that, and the night before that. You see what I'm saying? So you cannot change your behavior until you change your beliefs. What people do is they become abstinent. They stop doing it for a while. But the belief doesn't change, and so you're fighting yourself. So when I'm doing alcohol counseling, it's the difference between abstinence and sobriety. Sobriety is, I don't need it anymore. I beat it. Because my beliefs about it changed. So I've worked with people, sadly, 10, 15 plus years of abstinence. but they still believe I should be able to drink, you know, I grew up, my dad and everybody drinks and it's in my culture, why can't I drink? And so they never changed the belief about drinking, and then they fall. And they are worse than where they were 10, 15 years ago. Sobriety it means you're sober, you are thinking different, you're going in a different direction. And so people come here and they're frustrated, well, you know, why do I still think this way? Because you still believe that way. You still believe it should have worked this way, and I should be able to do this, and I should be able to do that, and that's called rationalization and justification.
I think a little bit also depends on people's personalities, you know, because weird example. We had lunch with the girl, so,
Maybe
in these. We went out and then we went back to her apartment. And then she was talking about like utensils, fork, spoons, and, cause everybody had like their favorite style and stuff. And I'm like, wow, that's weird, cause I'm not the same way, I am the same way. Then we find out we're both Aquarians. Cause more in like the star signs has their, you know, ways they are. I'm not trying to be clear or deny it, but I'm just saying.
I don't take it as a denial. I'm gonna approach it this way. So, here's what I found to be more true. Drugs alter, let's just use drugs. They alter your body chemistry. Right? So if you start drinking beer or alcohol, it's gonna alter your brain cells. And then your body begins to crave it. So it really has nothing to do with your personality as much as what you're doing. So when people get addicted to gambling, it's not that they were born with a gambling personality. There's something about gambling that releases that cortisol and that dopamine and that serotonin into the bloodstream, and they get addicted to that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but she has a huge family. I came from a very small family. So there's a relative, I'm just calling Nathan. And when I got involved with his family like 7 years ago, it was like, oh yeah, he was a loose cannon. He was the guy you're talking about, like, drink, wreck his car and whatever. But he lost his job over stupidity. And everybody, oh, you know, that's good. They feel sorry for him, they help him. Like, no, let the idiot stand on his own feet, let him learn life. But I'm the bad guy, being too logical, strict. That's what he always is, dude. I'm finding out.
So, that's a different situation though. You asked the question, it could be personality. And I'm saying I don't think it's personality. My experience has been personally and professionally, if I start doing something, drugs or gambling or whatever, pornography, it actually changes your body chemistry. And that's where the Bible coincides with that. It becomes a disease. So James says that we're drawn away by our own evil desires, that nothing draws us away, it's our own evil desires. Right?
That's why, like, I could tell, like, when, like, somebody in my family, like, does a lot of drugs and, like, drinks a lot of, like, heavy drinking and stuff, and you can tell, like, he's different. Like, how do I explain? It's just, like, the chemistry, you can tell, like, the brain chemistry is different, like, he's just weird, like.
It's a mood altering substance.
Yeah.
Right? In the old days, we called them spirits because people believed that literally you were drinking demons. They called them spirits because it would change the person's mood. What I'm telling you is from the physiological side of it, your brain chemicals change. And that's where the addiction comes in because the brain begins to desire the thing that you're using, even though it's hurting the rest of your body. The brain chemistry, that's why the pull can be so strong, right? And so we need to go back and understand, why do I believe alcohol or gambling or anger or anything can help me when I'm getting these negative results, which is another sign of addiction, that you continue to do the same thing in the face of negative results. All right, so how do we reprogram ourselves? In order to page 3. In order to reprogram ourselves, we must carefully choose a value system or belief system that will allow us to be successful and effective with others and our goals. We will need beliefs that are productive, effective, caring, pro-social behaviors that produce effective communication patterns with others, leading to good self-esteem, good relationships. So, number one, we have to do an examination of our conscience. Take a moral inventory daily. Don't just think about the thinking patterns and behaviors themselves, but make a determination if the thinking pattern and behaviors are productive or unproductive. You're asking yourself that question. Will the results, if I keep doing this, will the results of my behavior change, meet my needs over time? The answer is no. How can it? It's not meeting your needs now. How is it gonna change and meet your needs over time? 1B, think about the injury you have inflicted upon others. Examine conscience immediately as you think about irresponsible thinking patterns and behaviors. So what that means is, when you have a thought, well, you know, I need to go back to drinking, or I need to go back to smoking, or whatever it is, you need to think about, how did that behavior hurt others? How did it hurt me, and how did it hurt others? And let that be a sobering guide to you that, yeah, that's not gonna work, I've already tried that. Right?
You gotta get someone that's drinking to think that way.
Yeah.
That lowers their frequency when they're drinking like that, you know what I mean? Their judgment's off.
Yeah.
So, that's all I was.
C, use this thinking pattern as a proactive preventative tool. So, when I went through my process, the thoughts of using drugs and drinking started to go down, but every now and then I'd have a thought, oh, you should go out and party. And I would use it as a preventative, yeah, but the last time I did that, the last 10 times I did that, look at what happened. Now, I almost got divorced, and blah, 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 blah. Right? It's like a reality test. Number 2, and here's where you're showing that you really are maturing and that you really are sincere about what you're saying. Right? So it's like, in some respects, it's like the couples who say, well, we're gonna get married, so we might as well start having sex. It's okay, we're gonna get married anyway. Plan ahead, think ahead, and make another choice. Use this when you're reminded of past thinking patterns and behaviors that you're tempted to use again, right? You need to think of it like it's poison. If it's wrong, it's wrong. It's not something that you rationalize and justify and say, well, you know, because I was traumatized, or because we're gonna get married, or because whatever, it's okay for me to do this. No, you need to think ahead and plan ahead. If you're walking down the street and you fall in a hole 7 days in a row and you get hurt, you need to walk down a different street. You need to begin to plan ahead and think ahead. Now, we do this, I told you this, I think, everybody in here, I'm sure, has a spare tire in their trunk. You're planning ahead. You're not hoping for a flat tire. You're planning ahead as a contingency. If I get a flat tire, I got a spare so that I can keep rolling. When you don't plan ahead and think ahead, you are most likely to follow your old behavior because the beliefs haven't changed. One of the ways you can tell your beliefs are starting to change when you start planning ahead. You know what? I'm not gonna get on my laptop, because that didn't work. I'm not going down the pot of, you know, whatever it is that you're doing. When you start to plan ahead and think ahead, you're taking ownership and you're giving yourself a chance to overcome. List ahead of time your past thinking patterns and behaviors that equal poison. So what were you thinking the last time, and what did you do the last time that landed you in trouble? Try to predict with whom, where, and under what circumstances you tend to use irresponsible and unproductive thinking patterns and behaviors. Wanna do the last two? Or is it 3 more?
So a lot of times, usually in week like 2 or 3, people will say, or maybe even 4, you know, I've done this all my life, how do I get out of this, blah, blah, blah. Then we go through things like this, and literally, many of those same people do not want to accept this, because this is your way out. And in our humanness, we want the way out, but we want the way out to be an easy way out. And unfortunately, when you've been doing something for all of your life, even though it may be a negative behavior and it may be producing negative results, it's still comfortable, familiar, and predictable. And so it's hard for us to say, okay, I'm gonna put some work in to change this. When like I said earlier, when I first started down the road of I'm not going to get angry, it was not easy, because it went against everything that I believed in, put value in, gave myself permission to do. It went against all of that. And so it's almost like pushing a boulder up a mountain. You've got to put some energy into it. You've got to put some resistance into it. And it's not easy. But if you're serious about wanting change in your life and wanting something positive in your life, this is where you will find it, right here on this page. So my suggestion is to put this up somewhere where you can see it on a daily basis, where you can read it through and read it through several times a week and start putting it into practice. And number 3 is stop and think of who gets hurt. The reasoning process. Think about all the problems similar actions have caused you and others in the past. Use the bad, disappointing feelings to change yourself. Remember, the only person you can control is you. And that's literally the reality I had to come to is, Jackie, the only person you can control in this relationship is you. So control yourself and let God deal with Mike. Think about the whole picture or ripple effect of your actions. There is a ripple effect to everything that we do.
Hold on. So when you think about that, that can be powerful. Don't use that as an excuse. Well, I might as well get drunk again. Or I might as well gamble. Because that's what people, well, I've hurt everybody, I'm no good. No, you need to think about who have I hurt, and if you're sincere, you say to yourself, I don't want to hurt them again. So I'll go through some temporary pain to stop. Hello?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. One person believes it.
Yeah. It's so easy for us to, especially when we've been wounded or we've had trauma in our past, it's very, very easy to get self-absorbed. It's kind of like a wounded animal. We tend to kind of go in, and we want to lick our wounds, and we don't want to think about, I did not want to think about how my behavior was affecting him. And my 18-month-old, because she had just as much trauma with us screaming and yelling at each other. But I didn't want to think about that because I was so busy trying to control, and I was trying to justify and rationalize my behavior. Okay, 4. Stop and think of the immediate consequences. Before you act, think about the immediate consequences. Ask, what gets me into trouble? This is so hard for us to do, and yet it could keep us out of so much trouble. What gets me into trouble? What places do I go to get me into trouble? What people do I hang around that get me into trouble? What places do I go to? What beliefs do I have that get me into trouble? What beliefs do I have that hurt my relationships with others around me? That, like what Mike said, that is when we really know that we're serious about change, about changing ourselves. When we start asking these questions, remember, if anything can go wrong, it will go wrong. So don't try to convince yourself that, well, the last time this happened, but this time it'll be different. Because guess what? It won't be different, and it'll probably be even worse. And then the last one is don't dwell on mistakes. So don't dwell on the past. Use the past to help you with your future. Use the past to see what maybe where you went off, what beliefs you have that are not productive, but don't live there. And then focus on your priorities. We kind of talked about that. Setting priorities, setting goals, eliminating distractions, and focusing on that. There's a saying that we're not really successful until those we've hurt say we're successful. So when Mike started to change to the positive, he realized that the only way that our relationship is really going to be successful is if I could say, yeah, Mike has changed. Mike isn't the same person that he was when he was chasing the streets.
Don't dwell on mistakes. Let me just hammer that one. It's probably we're 3 or 4 minutes over. We need to go get kids or whatever. We're gonna do that. But don't dwell on your mistakes. Again, just think of the spare tire. If you're driving and maybe you're talking on your phone or you're not paying attention, and it's your fault that you drive into a hole and bust your tire, or you should have seen all of those nails there. It's a mistake that you drove over them. None of us sit in the car and stay there for the rest of our life. We either get out and change the tire ourselves, or we call and ask for help. So stop playing that game that, well, I made a mistake, I might as well give up, I'm no good. God doesn't love me anymore. That's a lie. He sent his son because he loves us. So don't dwell on the mistakes. What you need is a contingency plan. If I get off track, I need my, what is it called? GPS to start talking to me. And you know what the GPS says? I'm gonna reroute you. Rerouting, recalibrating. Get back on the highway or wherever you are to get where you're going. You don't stop there. Too many of us give up now. So like Jackie told you, I love this lesson because this is a lesson that changed me. I had all these crazy beliefs from my family and the environment I grew up in. It was important to me. It made me look like a tough guy, you know. It was important to me to have other women be interested in me. I gave myself permission to do all of that stuff based on those beliefs, and so I tried to control everything, her, my whole environment. I got positive reinforcement from doing negative things. Some of you are still getting that, and that's why it's hard to stop. And that's why you automatically, your brain takes you back to what you put in there. Your brain is like a computer. So when I was getting high, part of it was my brain said, this is how you want to relax. I'm uptight. Oh, you need to have a glass of wine, play some jazz music. Then get you some E&J. And you know, I put that, my brain didn't come up with that. I put it in there because of my behavior and my beliefs. So the brain just, oh, Mike's upset, here's what you want to do. So this is a lesson that's where the rubber starts to meet the road. As she said, people ask us all the time, how do I change? Page 3. Start practicing that every day. Read through them and ask yourself, am I taking a moral inventory daily? Father, we thank you again for your word and for biblical principles. Thank you for the opportunity to minister to your people. You love everybody in this room, no matter what we've done in our lives. If you can change me, Lord, and Jackie, you can change anybody. And so it's not a matter of whether you love us. It's a matter of, do we love ourselves? And are we willing to give ourselves a real chance to discover and become everything that you've created us to be? Give us the wisdom to identify where we need to grow and change. Give us the courage and the faith to pursue that growth and change, so we can discover and become everything you created us to be. We ask this in Jesus' name, amen. So I'm sorry, I got a little fired up, we went a little over.